This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to today's Talk Business and Politics Daily. I'm Roby Brock, joined by John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Good to see you, sir.
Good to be here as always.
All right. Let's jump right into it.
All right.
We had a huge development over the weekend with the passing of the legendary Senator John McCain. What do you think John McCain's legacy is going to be? Did you ever meet him?
I did. I met him at the old, smaller Washington airport one Friday afternoon in the 80s. I was up there for the Gazette for some reason, and on Friday afternoon, everybody heads to the airport and flees for home. And Dale Bumpers was at our gate to go Delta to Cincinnati or Atlanta and then on to Little Rock. And Bumpers said, "Hey, you want to meet John McCain?" And I said, "Yeah." And he was headed to Phoenix via some changeover, and met him, and Bumpers spoke of his great star quality and his heroism. And then McCain came to Little Rock in the early 00s with Russ Feingold to UALR for a presentation about campaign finance.
That's right.
And then did a news conference later. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't have anything to ask. And oddly, I don't know what this means, McCain came over to me, stared me down hard, and shook my hand for a long time, and almost to the point of discomfort. And I thought, what did I do? But I think he was just studying me. Maybe, I don't know. It was interesting.
Did he say something like, "You look like a guy I met in an airport one time with Dale Bumpers"?
I don't think that was it. Maybe, "Are you that guy who wrote that book I was the only one to read on Clinton?" Or maybe something like that. I don't know. But he was trying to figure something out, and it was sort of a pregnant moment. But he's a star. He's a hero. He's a great American figure. And to have him shake your hand in a stare down for an uncomfortable number of seconds is a moment in one's life, and I did remember it.
All right. What do you think his legacy is going to be there? What do you think? I mean, we're seeing a lot of the accolades. I think everybody in Arkansas's congressional delegation, past and present, has had nothing but glowing things to say about him, even though to a T, almost every one of them says I've disagreed with him over the years about everything. So Republicans and Democrats.
I saw in the New York Times, so Trump would say it's fake news, but I saw in the New York Times that McCain's death is itself a metaphor, or can itself serve as a metaphor for the death of an American era of political civility and bipartisanship. Not that he was always civil. He was famously not sometimes, because he was a complex person. But he was of early in life, after return from Air Force service and his being a hostage, he was actually a Senate staff member as a young person. Carried the bags for Joe Biden. He was like a young secretary to the Senate, and developed a great respect for the institution at that time, which he then carried through. Beyond that, he is of the great institution of our military and his family. So he represents both sort of respect for American institution and a willingness to be bipartisan and independent as a senator. He was certainly at times independent. And there are those saying that his death sort of means or indicates or coincides with a death of both traditional respect for institutions and that kind of independent nature of a senator, because everybody is so beholden to their partisan bases. I think that's a fair assessment as I have heard. While his death has caused many appropriate tributes, if you can go on social media and see people arguing about what a bad guy he was because he voted against Trump, and you can hear a Democratic senator, you can see a Democratic senator getting attacked from his base or her base, or a Democratic politician, for saying something nice about a Republican, both sides. So I'm not saying, McCain, that we have a complete death of civility or a complete death of respect for our institutions. I'm saying I agree with the New York Times that that his death is kind of a metaphor for a decline for a further decline in civility and a further decline in traditional respect for our institutions.
In the book of that civility and that traditionalism, there another chapter has passed.
Yes, I would say.
Way to say that.
Yeah, that's a good way to wind that up.
Former Senator Tim Hutchinson told me a good story about John McCain. He opposed the Northwest Arkansas Airport, XNA, up there, because he thought it was a boondoggle. It was too much money for a local project there, and he said we went round and round on that. I'd forgotten about that.
I was not aware of that too.
Debate.
You know, McCain was he had his scandals. He had the Keating Five. Mm-hmm. He was wrapped up in that, but he had this tendency to do what is not done that much anymore, which is say, basically, you're right, critics, you're right. I was a bad guy on that. Remember, I mean, think about this guy. In 2000, he's running for the presidency, and he captivates the nation really by driving a big bus around New Hampshire, a state that treasures sort of independent thinking, and having the Straight Talk Express, where reporters had a complete run of it, just go up and talk to him. And people had complete access to him, and we would have these town hall. His campaign was a series of town hall meetings in these New Hampshire notches, and he would just let them go on as long as people had questions to ask. He had no fear of, he was not a message-driven, robotic politician. That's the main thing that distinguishes him. He was a man who was comfortable saying what he thought and wasn't afraid to say what he thought, and we don't have much of that anymore in our politics. So his passing is a vague metaphor for several bad trends in our politics.
So before the McCain news that dominated the weekend last week was very much dominated by Michael Cohen going into a courtroom, it seems like eons ago, but it was really less than a week ago, and basically saying that the president directed him to make hush money payments to a Playboy model and a porn star. You've written a column about how Arkansas's congressional delegation reacted to that news and the pressing of what do you think about this? Do you still support the president on this? And why don't you share with people the tenor of what your message was?
Well, in case somebody did not see it yesterday in the paper, I used the phrase scaredy cat. You remember how I just talked about McCain and how he was willing to take any question and interact casually and at ease because he was confident in his views and not afraid to express himself, and how that was dying in politics? It is wholly dead in 5/6 of the Arkansas Congressional delegation. The Arkansas Democrat Gazette published Friday an article I found inspiring in its revelation. It was, the paper had solicited responses to the Trump and Manafort business regarding Trump from our Republican delegates in Congress. And to give credit where it's due, Tom Cotton is the only one of the 6 who was willing to interact spontaneously and with some sort of confidence about what he thought about it, and to dare to say something not glowing or defensive about the whole matter. He said, what this shows is that, at the very least, this president has surrounded himself, at least with a couple of people I would not have surrounded myself with.
Swamp creatures.
Yeah, that passes for candor and bravery in the contemporary Republican Party. And Cotton, I have respect for the fact that he said, come on over and talk to me about it, and he spoke with seeming ease about it. Womack, Bozeman, Westerman.
Crawford.
No, Crawford spoke. Crawford gave an interview. Regrettably, it wasn't any good. But they can't be bothered. They're unavailable for comment. French Hill, who is he's got a tough race on his hand, and he's trying, I think, to coast to victory on his mathematical probability of winning without chancing anything. He said he didn't have time to talk, but he had put out a written statement. When politicians do that, everyone needs to understand, they're saying, I don't trust what I might say if you ask me real live questions. But if I'll give you a statement in which I can have full control, in which I don't have to chance you're soliciting something from me that that I shouldn't have
or
said.
Or answering a follow-up question.
Or answering a follow-up. So that's, and he said that, you know, the statement said that at least there was no collusion. Not yet. The investigation's not over. So I found it, my point of my article was, and Crawford gave an interview and said, Mueller has gone on too long, he's meandered far afield, we need to rein this in. This has been 15 months looking into a Russian cyber invasion against our country and its free elections. Ken Starr, I hate to bring him up, but it's a fact. He sat around 6 years on a little old land deal in North Arkansas waiting for Bill Clinton to do what Bill Clinton did with that intern, and he finally got something after 6 years. I mean, that was nonsense. So my point was, and then I'll shut up, but my point was, this article, everybody go read it, or at least read my synopsis of it, because this is a perfect demonstration, microcosm of our political condition and your political delegation in Washington. 4 of them afraid to talk at all. 1 talks and shouldn't have. And Tom Cotton is the only one you got up there who seems to have a senatorial confidence that he can speak for himself without running his statements through consultants and insisting he make, if any statement, a written one. So, as much, the news
He's not
here.
up for re-election until 2020.
The news here is that I just said something laudatory about Tom Cotton. That's the news.
The headline, stop the presses.
Right.
Lastly, the Salt Bowl, the football game between Benton and Bryant at War Memorial Stadium, 38,000. There was a panic set off by a loud noise. May or may not have been a gunshot, still to be determined there. I think the larger question I may have for you on this topic, so that we don't have to drill down too deep into the details, because this is where the statewide argument will come from. Will we revisit some gun laws in this next legislative session as a result of this particular event?
I don't know. What one could we revisit? I mean, we've basically had the NRA come here and piggyback Charlie Collins's Guns on Campus bill to allow carry basically anywhere unless it's specifically forbidden. Perhaps will there be more specific prohibitions on guns in certain areas? There might be discussion of that, but this legislature is so beholden to gun rights advocates, I can't imagine any of that any of that taking hold. So I don't. Do you have an idea of some legislation that might stem? And from this incident,
well, to my point, I think the prohibitions, might we see some more prohibitions or restrictions put in?
I think some people are going to try it, but
like
can you see this legislature passing it? I mean, that's.
Well, I'm not sure what this legislature is going to look like just yet. So there are some competitive races out there.
I'm pretty sure.
And you do have a rise of the Moms Demand movement. And
yes,
that is
and more power to
traction,
them.
so.
And I hope for their success. This was a. Well, you didn't ask me to analyze what happened out there, but a remarkable.
But there were a lot. Saline County has got a lot of conservative voters in it. There were a lot of very scared Saline County people in that stadium, and rightfully so.
You know, if you wanted to have a candid discussion about all of that, which I'm actually averse to doing because it's so uncomfortable, and it was a legitimate panic and people were scared, and you don't want to make light of that or exploit it for a political point. But there are all sorts of political and cultural ramifications and factors in that matter. Suburban white conservatives gathered for a big game in the urban center of which they're fearful because of crime. And there's a sound of somebody thinks there's a gun and bedlam ensues. And then there's the issue of if everybody had had guns, you know, would that, what kind of disaster might have happened, or had guns and, as some say, use them to deter a mass shooter, what kind of bedlam would that have been? It all turned out, other than fright and inconvenience, thank goodness it was not any more than it was. But maybe someday when I'm more comfortable, because this is pretty raw on people's nerves, there's a lot of commentary to be done in this incident, a lot of things to say.
I'm thinking there might be a conversation about
there
some
might be,
restrictions
and
in
I
the
should
next
get into
legislative
it. And I'm not normally loath to get into them. And
it needs some time to figure out more of the facts more than anything else.
Let's all let the panic ease a little bit and the nerves get a little bit settled, and then talk about maybe some things that we could talk about. All right.
All right. He's John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. We're going to be off next week, so everybody has to watch this on a loop if they want to keep watching you next week.
Just watch
Labor
this.
Day.
Watch this over and over.
We're going to take a rest on our day from our labor.
We should. We're going to give the viewers a break. I think that's the thing.
There are a few that comment regularly. This is laborious for them to watch. To which I say, don't watch it.
Like when somebody on Twitter said, I accidentally read your column today and I can't stand it. And I don't know why I did. I have a standard response. Well, at least I can solve your Twitter problem. I can block you. And therefore, you don't have to listen to me anymore. But we appreciate all, don't we?
For multiple different perspectives being shared out there, and you bring a very valuable one to the table.
Well, you're so kind. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you.
All right.
All right. Thank you for watching. That's all for today's program. I'm Roby Brock. We will see you next time.
Each day, the promise of our nation begins again. Arkansas and America moving forward. I help make that promise a reality. It's not for everyone, but people everywhere depend on us.
Oh, I love you too, sweetie.
Trucking delivers, or everything stops. And that's what drives me.
I did.
Arkansas Electric Cooperative Corporation provides electric energy across 2/3 of Arkansas. This is an exciting time in our energy history, with incredible progress being made in renewable energy and storage technologies. As our energy portfolio continues to diversify, we'll maintain an all-the-above strategy to provide reliable and affordable electricity. Ever since the first light bulbs were placed in our members' homes, the electric cooperatives have been the solutions provider for our members, and we want to continue that well into the future.